Exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.
What's up, Met fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets at Rob. How is everybody doing today? Well, guys, I don't know how it happened. I don't know what type of magic wand Eduardo Escobar swung or whatever he did. But he got us over the hump yesterday against the Marlins. It was looking very bleak yesterday with a 4-run deficit. First, the 2-run homer. Then, the big 2-run single to the right side to bring in 2 more RBIs to make it a tie game. And then, in the 10th, Eduardo Escobar, yet they walk to get to Escobar, who was hot yesterday. And still, he comes through with a single to bring home Lindor for the winning run. Mets win 5-4. Oh, and on top of that, the Atlanta Braves lost to the Washington Nationals. How about that? For a little bit of luck, let's be honest, and a little bit of clutch hitting for Mr. September, Eduardo Escobar. I think we can definitely say we can call him that. Mr. September, Eduardo Escobar. People killed him. People wanted him on the bench. People wanted Guillermo to start every day. They wanted Escobar to only get starts against lefties when he batted right-handed. But he's batting. He was 34 for 93 in September. Batting excellent. Playing basically great defense. And guess what? We found a way to win a ball game that, let's be honest, we shouldn't have won. And I think the entire Braves and Nationals game, we just assumed that the Braves were just going to come back, win the ball game, sweep the Nationals, and the Mets had to do everything they can to win that ball game. And the Mets would have either been down a game or been tied going into Atlanta. Braves couldn't get it done. in extra innings when they had the opportunity as the away team to go ahead with the ghost runner in the top half of the 10th. But the Nationals, who are a gritty team, we've seen this when they beat us 2 out of 3. These kids play. That's why when people talk about teams like the Marlins, like the Nationals, who they basically everywhere you look, you can't find what do you find? One, maybe two veterans on that team, all young kids that are trying to stay up in the big leagues. And what do you expect them to do? Just bow down and say, all right, take the win. We don't want to play. No, it's going to be harder. That's why when people talked about the Mets have the easiest record in the easiest teams to face in September, you have to look at who did the Nationals bring up, who did the Marlins bring up, and every other team that brought up a lot of top prospects to see what they can do, to see if they can have them for next year and keep them on the roster. There's a lot of things you have to look at. I'm not saying that, and that's definitely not an excuse for the Mets to get swept by the Cubs, to lose 2 out of 3 against the Nationals, to fight tooth and nail to sweep the Pirates, to find a way to split the series against the 2-game series against the Marlins. It continues to look like the Mets haven't played well. But I think you have to take a step back and look at it this way. They haven't played well, but found a way to win series, even when they were playing bad. When things weren't looking good, oh man, we got to get this one game. We got to get this 2 games in a row. They got it. Like yesterday, after game 1 against the Marlins, and I was at that game, it was lifeless. You can tell. Yesterday, until, what was it, the 7th inning, it felt bleak. Excuse me. And it was just an amazing win. I know there was a lot of people on Twitter. I don't know if you guys listened to Sal Licata overnight, but he wasn't necessarily happy with the way the Mets played in the 2-game series. He was basically pissed off. Like, how can you play so bad at home against a Marlins team? I understand how I understand where he's coming from. But also what you have to understand is the fact that the Braves have been playing out of their mind since June 1st. Yet, every time they had an opportunity to take advantage of the Mets' small swoon, they lost 2 out of 3. Or they lost 3 out of 4. And it comes back to the fact that because the Mets find a way to figure it out every series, it seems, I'm very shocked because Sal this year has been more positive than I think he's ever been in his life with the Mets, and more positive than I have been as a Mets fan. So all I know is that these next 3 days, the weather's looking a lot better than it did 24 hours ago. So everything's looking all ready to go. And we'll go over the pitching matchups. We'll go over potential lineups and everything that we need to talk about this series. I'll take Sal. See, Sal reminds me, the problem with Sal Licata is that, and I listen to him and Keith McPherson a lot because I work between that time frame where Keith McPherson is on when I'm just starting work, and Sal Licata, comes on for about until like 5 a.m. So I'm going from Keith McPherson, Sal Licata to Boomer and Gio. So I get 4 different radio hosts within the time span that I work. The thing with Sal Licata that he was more positive when things weren't going well, and then I honestly he thinks that even if the Mets would have took 1 game against the Cubs, maybe if they would have took the series against the Nationals, that's 2 extra games that the Mets could have been on 100 wins, and most likely we could have been up by 2-3 games maybe, and all we had to do was win 1 game against the Braves, and we don't have to run the table, and the Braves have to run the table if we win one game in that Atlanta series. But with all that being said, the Mets found a way to still be one game up going into a 3-game series with the Braves. Best case scenario, winning one of those games has us tied going into the last 3 games of the season. And in all likelihood, the Braves sweep the Marlins, the Mets sweep the Nats, the Mets have the tiebreaker. So the Mets go into the playoffs as the NL East division leader, even with the tiebreaker. That's a worst case scenario situation where the last 3 games of the season, it will come down to that. Let's hope it doesn't come down to that. We'll look into different ways of how the Mets can clinch the division in this Brave series. And if you follow it, obviously you're subscribers of the channel, I put it up on my community page on how to do it. And I'm going to tell you just now how that's going to happen. All right. So Tim Britton put this up on Twitter yesterday after the Mets miraculously came back and win 5-4. The Mets can clinch the NL East with a weekend sweep in Atlanta. That's a fact. The Mets sweep Atlanta, which I think all of us are probably like, nobody's getting swept in this series. I think most the Brave fans and the Mets fans are fairly confident nobody's going to get swept. Now, things can happen. Something can happen where it can actually happen, and then if the Braves sweep the Mets, well, it's a whole different type of situation for the Mets. The Mets sweep the Braves, East is over, pop the champagne. The East is our shirts, will be orange and blue, and we win the NL East division in 2022. That's one scenario. Second scenario, taking 2 out of 3 would lower the magic number to 1 for the final series of the season. You take 2 out of 3, you have a 2-game lead going into the 3 games left against the Nationals and the Braves, the Marlins. Mets only have to win one of those games because the best the Braves can do, even if the Mets lose the final 2 games to the Nationals, the Braves, the Marlins, the Braves win the last 2 games, or even if they sweep the Marlins, it's still going to be a tie and the Mets win the division. So the Mets are in the driver's seat here. The Mets got to fight tooth and nail at the very least to take 1 game, but obviously 2 out of 3 basically in all likelihood clinch the division for the Mets if they take 2 out of 3. Fairly simple. And then the last set of situations, winning 1 would mean the Mets still control their destiny in the final series. So basically 3 options. Mets sweep, they win the NL East against the Braves. Mets take 2 out of 3, they need 1 game in the National Series to clinch the division. If they win 1, they still have the opportunity to have their own fate in their hands in the Washington National Series. Well, again, Ken. And like I said, you can go back to May when people said the games didn't matter in May, when they obviously do because they count as a win or a loss. That week in May, when the Mets might have lost, or what was it, June, I think it was, when the Mets lost their first series against Seattle. Well, if they would have took 2 out of 3, they would be up 2 games. You can go on and on and on. Well, what happens if the Braves would have took 3 out of 4 against the Phillies, right? What if the Phillies would have took 1 game in that series in Atlanta instead of losing all 3, right? So many things you can look at, and I understand it. Dylan, again, guys, you got to listen. Please listen. I just said it. If the Mets lose the series, losing the series means a sweep or 1 out of 3. If the Mets win 1 of those games, the Braves will be tied with the Mets once again, right? That's how it works, right? We're doing the math here. All right, good. So it will be tied going into the final series. Even with that said, the Mets still have control over the situation of the NL East. Because if the Mets match wins with the Braves, the tiebreaker goes to the Mets. The Mets take 2 out of 3. They only have to win 1 game against the Nationals to clinch the division. If they sweep the Braves, again, I doubt anybody's getting swept in this series. I think both teams are too good to let that happen. It's too dire for both teams to get swept. Oh, sorry, Dylan. All right. Well, yeah, Dylan, I said that. I know Ken. I think Ken might have been sarcastic. I think he kind of knows. But yes, it does matter if the Mets lose the series. Correct. Like I said, the Braves had a golden opportunity basically all September to take advantage of the Mets' bad, I wouldn't say bad play, but mediocre play in September, right? Both teams had 2 3-game losing streaks in September where both teams either lost 2 out of 3 in both of those times. Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's be honest, guys. Both teams had the opportunity. The Braves lost 3 out of 4. They had a 500 record in the West Coast. The Mets could have took advantage. They didn't do that, right? When the Mets got swept by the Cubs, the Braves lost 2 out of 3. It just seemed like both teams didn't want the NL East in September. Every time they had the opportunity to move ahead a little further and put a little bit of distance within themselves in the division, they didn't do it. So for as good as the Braves have been since June 1st, they faltered just enough to, at the very least, or at the very most, had a half-game lead for 24 hours in the NL East. They had multiple opportunities to do so. The Mets took it right back, and once again, they were tied yesterday, and once again, the Braves lost. The Braves went 4-2 against the Nationals recently, right? In 6 games. You know, the Braves could have easily went 3-3 because remember, this last series against the Nationals had the chance of winning the second game, 2 out of 3, because they had the opportunity to do so when it was the opportunity in the 9th the other day to win that ball game, and they didn't do it. And it could have been 3-3, and that would have been total disaster for the Braves. And then the Mets only had to take 1 game. But once again, Braves had numerous opportunities in September to move ahead. The Mets had numerous opportunities to break away, and they didn't. So you can blame, as a Mets fan and as a Braves fan, you can blame your own team for putting yourself in a situation where it's completely – look, basically the Braves have to sweep this series to not really worry about a tiebreaker for the Mets. Now the Braves sweep the series, they have the NL East in their hands to lose. That's where the Braves put themselves, not just losing that game yesterday, but what they've done in September. Even though both teams have really good records in September, there was opportunities for both teams to do what they had to do to make this series not as important as it's going to be. Now, both the Braves and the Braves fans would want to be in the Mets situation right now. But that's why when some Braves fans said, oh, the Braves are better, on paper, they're better. Can't blame you, can't fault you on that one. Can't deny that. But were the Braves better than the Dodgers last year in the playoffs? Technically, no. Right? Technically, they're probably like, what was it, a 20-game difference in records that the Dodgers had more wins? Dodgers beat them. Houston, World Series. Braves clearly weren't better than the Houston Astros. technically on paper, right? Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, were the White Sox on paper better than the Guardians? Absolutely. Were the Twins on paper better than the Guardians? Absolutely. Well, the Twins just got eliminated from the playoffs, from making the playoffs. The Guardians clinched the Central. That's basically it. It doesn't matter when it comes down to who's better on paper. Yeah, you can look at the numbers and everything like that, but the difference with the Mets lineup and the Braves lineup is fairly simple. Yes, they have a little bit of a lot more production within the entire order. Like, there's really not much of an easy out in that Braves lineup. Well, Dylan, I said this yesterday about the Phillies, and I think we're both very happy about that. The Phillies could have easily and should have took 3 out of 4 against you in Philadelphia. They blew it. So I said yesterday, hey, I hope the Phillies lose every game after the Braves series and choke away their wild card spot and miss the playoffs after the nonsense that they had no business splitting that series against you, because they could have easily took 3 out of 4 against you when they had multiple opportunities in extra innings in Game 3 to take the first 3 games of the series, and they didn't. And that's where I say, you know what, Phillies? The hell with you, lose the last 10 games on the road, miss the playoffs, and you can watch the Braves and the Mets make the playoffs while you're playing golf. Put it that way. And I said this from day one. There is no coincidence that as soon as Bryce Harper and his toxic, I don't care, MVP or not, right? There hasn't been a Philly fan on this channel since July. That's how you know how bad that situation is with the Phillies, right? Soon as Bryce Harper went to the Phillies and left the Nationals, they won a World Series the following year. I said it. Bryce Harper is a great player, great talent, but he's a toxic player. He does not make other players on his team better. Francisco Lindor, bad season last year, has a great season this year. He makes people better on his team. I don't know if it's emotion. I don't know if it's teamwork, camaraderie. I don't know. He makes. Now I'm trying to think of high value, high salary players that makes players better around him. Lindor does that. Some people might say, oh, well, you know, even still Mets fans are killing Lindor. All right, yesterday was not a good at-bat yesterday. Swinging at the first pitch right after the pitcher walked the first 2 batters in front of you, not a smart play. But you know what? At least he's the type of, I can't kill him when he's trying to, I hate when a batter looks at pitches. That's why I can't stand Vogelback as much as, he's the every man type of guy. I don't like it. And at least Lindor swings away. When he strikes out in a big situation, at least he's swinging. It's rare that he's looking at strike 3. So I can't kill him on that. Bryce Harper does not. He won the MVP last year, and where were the Phillies? They were with the Mets watching the playoffs. So, and this goes to the same thing with Trout. Trout is a great player, but does he really make other players around him better? No. The individual stats are great, but if you don't help make your team better and be a leader, even though I think Trout is more of a product of the owner in Los Angeles, I just think Bryce Harper is just not a guy that, one, is a leader, like Ken said, and 2, doesn't make players around him better. You can tell Lindor is a leader, right? The constant conversations he's having with everybody, how he grew up within a year because it looked like it was going to be very bad for him after last year. The thumbs down, saying that he don't understand New York yet. The boos affected him. Well, he made a total 180 this year, and is the leader of this team. You know, Pete Alonso is the productive leader of this team, but Lindor is the emotional leader of this team, position player wise. I think Scherzer is the guy who's in the dugout, basically being the watchdog. If they're not walking the straight and narrow, Scherzer's going to be on their ass. Lindor is the emotional leader. Pete Alonso is the productive leader. We talked about this last year. What did the Mets lack last year? They lacked a leader. And if it wasn't a player that didn't step up, we needed a manager who was a leader. Rojas wasn't a leader. At the moment, Lindor last year wasn't a leader. Alonso wasn't really, you could tell that he didn't want to step up to certain guys like Lindor and Baez and Stroman. And you know what? Walker you can put in that mix as well, because Walker was in that little clique, you know, along with certain other players like the J.D. Davises of the world as well. They were in a little clique that were on their own. Like, you know, it was like high school in the Mets dugout last year. There was one group over here. There was one group over here at another lunch table. There wasn't a leader that got the team together. When you watch the Mets, you know who the leaders are, right? You see when things are going, when you could see they enjoy playing with each other. They like each other. They try to pick each other up. All right, yesterday you saw Lindor and Alonso didn't come through in a big spot yesterday. All right, fine. But you know what? Escobar, who was getting picked up by his team all year until late August into the rest of September, he picked up the guys on that team. Those are championship teams. This is what the Braves did last year in the middle of August after they made those trades go straight through into the playoffs. That's exactly what they did, right? They had that leader in Freeman. They had the clutch hits. They had camaraderie. You know what? And as much as the Braves fans love Acuna, the Braves won without Acuna. And don't think that's a coincidence. Acuna, talent-wise, is a great player, but he's not a leader. He's a very productive player. Talent-wise is excellent. But I don't know if necessarily Acuna is a leader. I said this in the stream the last couple of times I had a live stream. Ozzy Albies is more of a leader than Ronald Acuna. The reason why I said it, obviously, Acuna has way better talent than Ozzy Albies. But Ozzy Albies brings that look. He might not be the biggest leader in the world, but I think he is an emotional leader in that clubhouse. And losing him is a big blow to the Braves. And I said that. The guy worked his ass off to come back and then gets hurt not too long after that. That sucks. That hurts the Braves. Not having Freddie Freeman. I don't care if Olson has 42, 43 home runs. He's the guy where he's not going to step up as a leader. Even though he's getting hot right now, he's not a leader. Freeman was that leader, right? If it wasn't for Eddie Rosario and Jorge Soler, would the Braves would have won that World Series? They might have made the World Series. I don't know if they would have won it. Big reason was because Freeman, Soler, and Rosario, two guys that were acquisitions. They weren't two guys that were on this team and established themselves as leaders, but they got hot at the right time. It was the right trades at the right time for the Braves. I said this in May. The Braves, with Freddie Freeman, without Freddie Freeman, is a big blow, not numbers-wise. Because you know what? Bryce Harper puts up big numbers. But where are the Phillies every year, right? The Braves are too talented not to make the playoffs. But there is a different feel with this Braves team than there was last year. Last year, I was afraid when Freddie Freeman came up because every time, if it wasn't a home run, if there was people on base, he would find a way at least to move the runner over, put the bat in the ball. You know the difference? with Matt Olson, he batting 45 points less. 50 points less than Freddie Freeman. More strikeouts. About 75 more strikeouts. 85 more strikeouts than Freddie Freeman. It's not always about just the pure numbers. It's what goes within the day and day of baseball itself. Yeah, I understand that. But it's not just about the playoffs either, Dylan. It's also about during that season when you needed that big hit, right? Where was Matt Olson for this whole month of September, except for recently, when you probably needed him to get that big hit, right? In September. I guarantee you Freeman would have got it, right? Matt Olson can hit a lot of home runs. But when you bat 260, 250, that's a huge discrepancy in average from Freeman to Olson. You know, Olson lays into one, hits a home run. Matt Olson's a huge strikeout guy. Great player, really good player, defensively great player. I still think Freeman is just as good. Now, Olson might have a better hands, but Freeman is still, I think, a better leader and a guy that when Freeman comes to the plate, I always felt like he was coming through. You can't tell me that you feel confident when Matt Olson comes up that he's going to get the job done. I always felt Freeman was going to get the job done. Even if it wasn't bringing that runner in with less than 2 outs, he would at least put up a good at-bat, at least put up a productive out. Something in that knee, he always did something. I truly believe that Matt Olson is a strikeout or a home run type of guy. When he faces really good pitching, look at his numbers. And listen, I'm not going to tell you something on this channel that I didn't look up myself. Matt Olson against bad pitching is batting 285. Matt Olson against good pitching, and I'm talking about top 3 starters on teams, top 3 starters on each and every team. Good teams. Look at the starters. Good teams, you know he's batting? 230. That's without runners on and with runners on. That's just total throughout his season. That's nearly a 40-point difference just based on good pitching and bad pitching. When he has good pitching with runners on, he's batting close to 210. With runners not on base, he's batting 245 against good pitching. Against bad pitching, excuse me. So he's not when he faces really good pitching, he struggles. Look, Kyle Schwarber is batting 212, but he's going to probably have 45 home runs at the end of the year. What does that tell you? He strikes out a lot, he hits a lot of home runs. And he strikes and he has a bad average. Now, Olson is hanging around the 250 range, starting to get hot, so he might have pushed it over 260. But you can't have one of your centerpieces in the months of September going down the stretch run and was 2 for his last 40. You can't have that when he's in the middle of your lineup. You know, the Braves survived that because they have 3-4 other players that can take care of business. You got to remember, last year, after losing Ronald Acuna, people thought the Braves were done, right? Getting Soler and getting Rosario, everybody's like, they're okay players, but they're not, linchpin type players. Well, guess what? They were. So I have a pretty good feeling that if Freeman wasn't on this Braves team last year, who knows if the Braves would have kept afloat, and they would have probably won the division because the Mets had no pitching after DeGrom, and they fell apart because their offense wasn't even good when they were scoring less than 3 runs a game. So there's a different feel with this Braves team. Yes, they had a great June until the end of the season, but don't tell me Now, Olson was hot the first 2 months of the year, right? He was one of your best players for the first 2 months of the year. Yes, you didn't have Acuna for a little while, but is that really an excuse? Because the Mets didn't have Max Scherzer for 10 weeks in total this season, and didn't have DeGrom until the second part of the second part of the year. So in total, we didn't have Scherzer and DeGrom in this rotation for nearly 16 weeks of the season. So there's no excuse for that. Especially when when the Mets were throwing Trevor Williams out there and Thomas Szapucki and doing bullpen games when there was no DeGrom or Scherzer. They still increased their lead against the Braves during that time frame. And yes, the Braves, it took a historic run for the Braves to catch the Mets. Give them credit, but let's not mistake ourselves in thinking that if Scherzer only missed 4 out of those 9 or 10 weeks instead of 10 weeks, there might be a couple of more wins under the Mets belt. And the Braves probably wouldn't even be, the Mets would have probably popped champagne ready for the division. So you can look at it a lot of different ways, right? Do I think the Braves would have a couple of more wins if Freeman was on this team rather than Olson? Absolutely. That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree, but it's a fact. You can't have your centerpiece of your lineup in Matt Olson going 3 for 40 of a 3-week stretch in September when that's the time you really need the wins to get back into the NL East, get back into a lead, or try to catch the Mets. You can't have that. Freeman's getting hot. Olson's getting hot now, which could help the Braves, could not help the Braves. Let's see what he does against really good pitching, because look at the numbers. He doesn't hit well, average-wise, with runners on or without runners on against good pitching, really good pitching. And Freeman hits everybody. I'm telling you, when Freeman comes up, I'm nervous as hell. When Olson comes up, at least I know there's a way out to get Olson out. Olson's a big strikeout guy. Yeah, but we'll see. Just think, what if Matt Olson, instead of hitting under 100 in the month of September, hit 200? Getting those couple of hits when he came up to win ball games for the Braves, and you lost them. That's basically the problem right there, right? If Olson comes through in 3 or 4 of those games in September, when you needed him to come through to take the lead and possibly win that game, you would be in the lead right now. It's little things like that. Okay, he has a 4-game hit streak right now. Who did he play in the last 4 games? A terrible Phillies team and a terrible Nationals team. Again, it's not hypotheticals. Look at the facts. I'm giving you stats, Dylan. Stats. Matt Olson against good pitching, average. Against bad pitching, average. Look at it. He's barely hitting over 210 in the season against good pitching. Against bad pitching, he's ranging around 250, 260. You do the math, look where his average is, right? It's right in the middle of 250, 260, right? Look at the facts. Not saying Matt Olson is not, at the end of the year, he's going to have good numbers. But when you bat 50 points less than the guy you're replacing, that's probably 2 or 3 wins off your record just based on average compared to Freeman and Matt Olson. Matt Olson's a really good player, and I said that. He's probably a little bit better defensively than Freeman, but it's not like Freeman was a doormat at first base. He was one of the better defensive first basemen in the last 10 years. But it's not hypothetical. The point is, hypothetical, I just gave you hypotheticals with the Mets, right? If the Mets had Scherzer for 5 extra weeks instead of losing him for 10 weeks, the Mets will probably have 2 or 3 more wins. It's just simple numbers. You know, Brave fans don't want to admit the fact that Matt Olson is not better than Freddie Freeman as a whole. Really good player, but he's going to strike out probably 100 more times than Freddie Freeman. Huge difference. Yeah, Lion, but how many blowout wins against bad teams did you have? Like, you Braves fans don't want to admit that Olson is not a better player than Freeman. You're just butthurt because Freeman said to go F yourself and went to the Dodgers. That's the problem. Olson's younger. Olson's going to have a lot more time, a lot more years than Freddie Freeman had over the next 5 or 6 years. That's the whole point. That's not the point. But you can't tell me that Freddie Freeman would only give you 2 or 3 more extra wins in 2022. You sure about that? Dylan, have you been following my channel? Before September, that's all everybody's been saying at Matt Olson. Oh, look how good he is. Look how good he is. We don't need Freeman. We don't need Freeman. You don't have to be – Freeman's not going to – having Freeman off the team is not going to have you 10 more losses. But it's a matter of 2 or 3 games when in the month of September – well, Dylan, I don't know what to tell you. The point is, you don't have 2 guys in the top 5, 2 guys that totals the same amount of RBIs. The good thing about the Braves, and which is why the Braves are dangerous, is that their lineup is very long. They got 5, 6, 7 guys, possibly even 8 guys that are dangerous in the lineup. And this is not saying the Braves are a bad team. I'll be stupid to say that. You don't have 97 wins and you're a bad team. Both teams are probably going to win 100 games, right? That's pretty fair to say, right? That's not something that's up in the air. There's a pretty good chance both teams are going to win 100 games. So nobody's a bad team. Nobody's a mediocre team. They're borderline great teams. But Lion, you can't say that. Again, you're looking at paper. You're looking at the paper. You're looking at, oh, look who's on this team. Look on this team last year. Yeah, when you don't have Jorge Soler and you got Will Harris, yeah, obviously you're going to look at that. Wow, yeah, that's a lot better. Clearly. But let me ask you something. Do you trust Freeman in a big spot or Matt Olson in a big spot? With Matt Olson having 50 points less of an on his less than points on his average and strikes out 100 more times than Freeman. Who do you trust more in that big spot against good pitching? Look at the stats. Well, Chipper, I don't know why everybody's giving the Dodgers so much credit, because every year in a 162-game season, going into a postseason, they always find a way to choke. So until they win non-pandemic season, do they really have a leg to stand on? Because they win 100 games every year, yet they choke every year. And the only time they actually went over the hump during the pandemic season for 60 games. Well, if the Braves fans don't feel confident against facing the Dodgers in the playoffs, then I don't know what to tell you. That's all I'm saying. Like, it makes no sense. Both the Mets and the Braves won the season series against the Dodgers. The Braves and the Mets have good enough pitching to beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers, if you look at their lineup after the first 5 guys, 6, 7, 8, 9 is a joke. They're not that good. The majority of their runs scored is from the first 5 batters. If you take care of business with that, that's why the Mets won that series at Citi Field when they took 2 out of 3. They, for the most part, controlled the first 5 batters of that lineup. I can actually say that the Braves have a much better lineup 1 through 9. I'm sorry, the Braves have a much better lineup 1 through 9 than the Dodgers do. Freddie didn't do nothing in the Braves playoff run. Okay, sure. No problem. Okay. If you want to say that, say that. But here's the difference of that. If you want to go into that. If Matt Olson was on the Braves last year and not Freddie Freeman, would you have won the division last year? You won 88 games last year. Right? You're looking in a perspective. I think you're looking too broad Lion. You're looking too broad. You never want to admit that your Braves are lacking in some areas when it comes to leadership. Because let's be honest, you didn't win last year. You know, everybody wants to praise Acuna and his talent, and he's a great player. But you won the World Series without Acuna last year. That doesn't say something to you? Who was on that team last year? A lot of the same guys. One of the guys that you counted on last year, Anansi Albies, is not here. I think he's one of your big emotional leaders on that team. Acuna, not the same player since the injury, still very talented. But you're losing a guy. See, people don't want to give Freeman enough credit. You know what I'm saying? You should easily be winning this division right now the way the Mets played in September. The big reason why, and one of them, is because Matt Olson was complete garbage in the month of September. Chipper. Do you think? No, absolutely not. If Marte doesn't come back, the Mets have no shot. Yeah, they might make it interesting with their pitching, but this lineup is not good enough for the Mets. You know, some Brave fans might think I don't critique the Mets. I critique them every day. No, if Marte doesn't come back, the Mets, yes, with their pitching, could make it run in the playoffs, but I don't think they'll be good enough lineup-wise, run producing-wise, if Marte's not in that lineup. Marte has been one of our best players all year. When the offense was slumping, Marte seemed like he always got a big hit. It was always Marte in the early part of that lineup. Marte is not ready for the playoffs. Like, there was some chatter that he was supposed to be ready for the Brave series, but he's not going to be. That's a huge loss. Again, I'm putting no excuses here. No excuses at all. The Mets lose this series against the Braves or they get swept, it's on them. There's no excuses there. At the very least, you should take one of those games against the Braves with the pitching matchups, with the starters that the Mets have going. They're big three. It's very simple. You know, the Mets are far from perfect at all. They have huge holes in this lineup that piss me off every single day. Lion, again, you're not listening. This is the problem with you, Lion. Are they way better? Sure. But in the month of September, when you could have easily won this division with the way the Mets played, the big reason why is because when Matt Olson came up in big spots in September, he completely split the bit. Freeman probably would have came through. It's very simple. Are they way better? Yeah. If you look on paper, yes. Record-wise, of course. They already got 10 more wins, almost 10 more wins than they had last year. They're going to have 100 wins, just like the Mets. You know what? But when the Mets are rolling out the garbage of Vogelback, the garbage of Ruff, the garbage of James McCann, we've played absolutely, even though we have winning records, the Mets have a winning record in September, they haven't played well. Lion, I agree. They should have cruised in September and win the NL East. But don't act like the Braves had the hardest schedule in baseball either. Yet you should have cruised to the NL East the way the Mets played against their easy schedule. You still didn't. So stop blaming, you should blame the Braves, your own team a little bit for not doing a better job. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can critique both teams for the reason why they're not ahead in the NL East by a few more games. The Braves had a golden opportunity when the Mets got swept by the Cubs. They lost 2 out of 3 against the Giants. That was their golden opportunity right there. So as much as good as the Braves have been, and they've been on a tear since June 1st, I think the Braves are so much better right now since June 1st that when September came and we looked at the schedules, the Braves had, they had a lot of Phillies games. But again, I think Brave fans can agree that the Phillies are not that good. I'm sorry. I think the Phillies are a not good team. Their pitching sucks. Their defense sucks. Right? The big reason why you're not in the lead in this division because you couldn't beat the Phillies. Finally, recently you have, but you should have took 3 out of 4 against the Phillies. Right? They almost beat you 3 out of 4. That's a problem. Like, there's certain September, both teams they got winning records. So if you look at the records, you're like, oh, not bad. But considering where you were, both of us were in the division, and the Mets didn't have more than a 2.5 game lead in September. And at one point, the Braves had a half-game lead for 24 hours. Both teams have multiple opportunities to have this series mean nothing. And they both shit the bed. As good as these teams are, they both shit the bed. DeGrom forgot how to pitch for a week and a half. Matt Olson was 3 for 40 when, he started to get hot a little bit recently. But recently, it's been home runs for him, which is basically what he does, right? Again, not a bad player at all, right? He's younger than Freeman. It was a no-brainer to sign him to a long-term contract. You're not signing Freeman for 8 years. I thought that was a stupid contract to give to Freeman since his age. But Freeman's still a really good player, and I still think more of a leader, right? When the Braves needed Olson the most, he was in a corner trying to figure out how to put the bat on the ball in the month of September. That's a huge problem in the month of September, the majority of it. See what he does here. Looked good in the National Series, but I gave you the stats earlier. And I told you, I'm not going to, am I down a point or two when I looked at it? Yeah, but it's not much of a difference. Against bad pitching, Olson is around 260 average. This is just in total, not with runners on and with runners off. Against good pitching, he's batting 210. Runners on, averaging around 225. With runners with runners in scoring position, he's batting around 215. If you do the math on that, that's why he has a 250, 260 average. Again, as a power hitter, 260 is fine. The problem is, when you needed him most in September, when he came up many times in the month of September to put the Braves ahead or put him in the lead or win a ball game, he struggled. Well, Lion, you have Dylan, who's a Braves fan as well, who's telling me don't talk about hypotheticals. Well, don't bring up hypotheticals. The point is, who have you really played in the months of September that's actually good? Seattle? You want to look at the Braves schedule? Let's look at the Braves schedule. Since you want to give up a hypothetical, they said don't do hypotheticals for the Mets. I won't do hypotheticals for the Mets. But for your sake, let's look at the Braves schedule in the month of September. Let's see. September. Let's look. Alrighty. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. September. Let's see, September 1st. They play the last few days in August into the first of September, Colorado, bad team. Marlins, bad team. A's, bad team. Seattle, very good team. San Francisco, bad team. Phillies, do you want to call the Phillies a good team? I don't think we can call them a good team, right? All right, here we go. Philly, Washington, more Philly, more Washington. And you got the Mets and Miami. We basically played the same amount of teams. It's not like you didn't face the A's in September. You did. Right? We faced the Marlins. You faced the Marlins. We faced Colorado. You faced Colorado. Right? You had them in September. We had them in May. Let's see. San Francisco, we had them in April. They were a better team in April than they were now. Right? You've played Philly 7 times. You played the Nationals in September. Let's see. 6 times. So you didn't play a lot of good teams either. Just because the Phillies, the reason why percentage-wise you have a little bit better harder schedule, a little bit of a percentage-wise harder schedule, is because the Phillies have more than 85 wins or 82 wins. That's the reason why. Everybody else is under 500 except for Seattle. But that's what I'm saying, Jay. It's not like San Francisco is out of a playoff spot. Yes, and I just gave you. So if you swap the Marlins, here, put it this way. You swap the Cubs and the Giants. Giants could be a little bit better. But you didn't have a good schedule either, right? You lost 2 out of 3 against Seattle. Really good team, right? Playoff, most likely a playoff team. They should hold on, right? San Francisco, are they a good team? No, they're borderline good. The Mets played them 3 games, but you also lost, right? You beat Oakland 10-9 and 7-3. All right, the Mets took 2 out of 3, so it's a wash there, right? You played Miami 2. And you played Miami 5 times from September until the end of the year, right? Okay. So I don't see the problem. We basically faced the only teams that we swapped is, you want to put a good team? Seattle and Milwaukee, right? But both borderline playoff teams. I think Seattle's a little bit better than Milwaukee, but when you look at the playoff scenario, they're both fighting to stay alive for the wild card spot. San Francisco, a little bit better than the Cubs, but record-wise, they're not much better. You lost 2 out of 3. We got swept by the Cubs. Again, you played Philly 7 times. I think we both can agree Philly isn't that good, right? Let's be honest. The reason why the Mets have a division lead by 1 game, look at the records between the Phillies for both teams. You know, and you played Washington 5 times in the month of September as well? No doubt. The Mets should have easily won this division. But let's not act like the Braves should have been just as bad in September than the Mets. We both have winning records, but we both could have won a lot more games in September than than our record has. All right, you want to run through the Mets schedule even though I do it all the time? All right, no problem. Let's do it. And I can show you we're basically playing the same bad teams except for swapping 1 or 2 teams, right? Oh, look, September 1st. Let's look at that. Oh, look at that. In September, faced the Dodgers. The last game in the series, we won. We faced the Nationals, right? No, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's terrible, right? Mets won 2 out of 3. They didn't lose the series, right? Milwaukee is tied with the Phillies now, Lions. So right now, they're in a playoff spot. So they're in the playoffs. They're not out of the playoffs yet. Here we go. Miami. Last time I checked, Braves faced Miami. The Cubs. The Mets got swept by the Cubs. But in that same time frame, you lost 2 out of 3 to the Giants, who record-wise, not that much of a difference. Pittsburgh, Mets swept them 4 games. Can't really tell you that there's anybody worse than that. Can't tell you that. But we faced Milwaukee, right? Is Seattle better than Milwaukee? Yes. But Milwaukee's a playoff team. Borderline. The Mariners, look at their record. Look at where they are. They're borderline playoff team. The Oakland A's, they took 2 out of 3 against the A's. The Braves played them twice in September. Mets played the Marlins again. You played the Marlins in September. And we play each other this weekend. And then we swap teams at the end of the year. We play the Nationals, you play the Marlins. So let's not act like we played a lot of different teams. Again, Pittsburgh, Chicago. You want to swap the Giants? All right, we'll swap the Giants with the Cubs. Close to similar records. 3 or 4 game difference. Not much difference. But here's the difference with both teams, or the similarity with both teams. Both teams are going to have 100 wins. Both teams could have had a way better September than probably, right? In 6 games against the Nationals, you're 4-2. looks like a good record, but considering what the Mets have done in those 6 games, you go 5-1, you're probably leading in the NL East by 1 game going into the series. Again, you played Pittsburgh. Your June was the Mets September. So your June, when you won, what was it, 16 in a row? You were playing a lot of the same teams the Mets are playing in September. So you had a very easy June while the Mets had a very easy September. You can say they kind of wash each other out. You know, I don't know if you know this, Lion, but April matters just as much as September. The Braves lose this division. One, you could talk about the season series against the Phillies between the Mets and the Braves, and look at April and May. And don't bring up Acuna, and don't tell me, oh, Will Harris wasn't up yet, or Grossman wasn't up with. They weren't. But the Mets didn't have Scherzer for 10 weeks and didn't have DeGrom for the first half of the season. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But you had a minor league schedule in June. Look at your June schedule, the easiest schedule in June, right? When you won 16 games in a row, you had the easiest schedule in baseball in June. Kind of washes September for the Mets, right? You played Pittsburgh just as much as we played Pittsburgh, but you played them in June. You played them earlier in the season. Sorry. Again, Lion, if the Braves are so much better, why haven't you won the NL East? Why haven't you been up by 5 games? Yeah, but Christian, you couldn't afford to split that series against the Phillies the way the Mets were playing. You did. You easily could have lost 3 out of 4. You should have won. The Phillies aren't good. Why are you struggling against them? You have one team in the Phillies that you struggle against. Admit it. You have a losing record. It is what it is. Okay. And the Mets took advantage of a pretty hard schedule, April and May. Okay, you took full advantage of a June schedule. Congratulations. Right? The Mets didn't take full advantage of a September schedule. Last time I checked, the Braves are still trailing the Mets by 1 game. So, as good as the Braves have been, they struggled just enough in September where they played mostly the same teams in September. I'm sorry. You know what? Lion, you talked about, the Mets can't sweep bad teams. Well, yeah, we haven't. We did with Pittsburgh. That was it. But guess what? The last 2 series against the Nationals, you didn't sweep them either. Those 2 games could be the matter of the Braves up a game and the Mets up a game, and that's what they are. Sorry, Lion. You come on here, don't want to say anything negative about the Braves when they had just as good as September as the Mets. But you still don't have a division lead when you had every opportunity to do so. Again, I just went over the schedule. Sorry. You don't like the fact that I'm giving you facts and you're not looking at the facts. You're just saying, oh, well, the Mets had an easy September. Well, you played the same teams in September than the Mets played in September that the Braves played in June. Yeah, Vinny, and the last 10 games, we have the same record. And I think in the last 11 now, the Mets have 1 game, which is the difference in the division right now, in the last 11 games. So if the Braves took full advantage of June, well, guess what? April and May mattered it too. And you could say, oh, we didn't have Acuna. We didn't have Will Harris. Well, yeah, okay. Well, the Mets went into June with the hardest schedule in baseball with the teams they were facing in June. Remember, they went on that long West Coast trip in June when the Braves had the easiest schedule in baseball in June. So, and let's be honest, the Braves don't have the hardest schedule in September, right? What do they got? The 5th easiest schedule in baseball? 6th? Mets have the number 1, but they've won just enough to continue to keep the lead. Dylan, the reason why I respond to Lion, because he comes on here every time, and the Braves are the best team in baseball. The Braves are better. The Braves are this. The Braves are that. Well, Lion, that's what I'm saying. You're just both the Braves and the Mets, man. Listen, man, the Braves and the Mets, I'm not saying they're bad teams, but they had bad losses that couldn't mean the difference of the Braves being up 2 or 3 games and the Mets being up 2 or 3 games. And this series during the weekend could have meant absolutely nothing for both teams. And both of them shit the bit. That's the problem with both of these teams. They had numerous opportunities in September to take well advantage of the teams playing like, I can't say crap because they both have winning records in September, but played in somewhat mediocre, where if they sweep a bad team here, you know, if the Mets would have swept the Nationals instead of losing 2 out of 3, or sweeping the A's instead of taking 2 out of 3. If the Braves didn't split against a Phillies team that we both agree are not that good, things would have been different for both teams. Listen, whoever loses this division, the Mets or the Braves, right? Because it's still up in the air. I think we can agree on that. Whoever loses this division, both fan bases are going to look back on the September and be like, wow, we should have won that game. Damn, we should have took 3 out of 4 against against the Phillies. Damn, we should have swept that series against the Nationals. We didn't. You know, and who knows what's going to happen in the last 3 games of the season, right? We don't know. You play the Marlins, we play the Nationals, right? You can look back and say, actually, Max, you're wrong. There is. You want me to find one for you? There is. There's about 2 or 3 Braves channels. But again, you can come in this channel. I have no problem Brave fans going on this channel. And Max, they have Braves channels, right? Maybe they don't come on when the Braves don't play a game, because the Braves were playing yesterday, but there was enough Brave fans in my stream when the Braves were playing and the Braves channel was on. They want to come on to troll. That's okay. And that's fine. But don't come to me with no facts and then try to continue to make comments that make no sense. Well, yeah, but Lion, you're still looking at paper. That doesn't mean nothing. Again, you're not looking at the records and looking at games against each other, because that's all you can go on at this point, right? How many years in a row have the Dodgers been the best team in baseball, are favored to win the World Series, and they choke every year? I think we can agree we can leave the pandemic year out of it, because the one year the Dodgers get over the hump is 60-game season, right? Every year they fall in a 162-game season in the postseason, right? The Braves and the Mets have a winning record against the Dodgers. But you can believe, but it's not a fact, right? Until you have a better record than the team that you're claiming or you're better than, you're not a better team. Just because they're a better team on paper means absolutely nothing on the field. And I think the Braves and the Mets can look at the month of September and show that better team on paper means absolutely nothing. Well, Lion, yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. I said that. The Braves have to sweep this series to give them a good chance of winning this division. If they take 2 out of 3, yeah, it's good. And it still gives you the opportunity of making that last series of the year very important for both teams. But it puts you in a bad spot. But it's not just about the Nationals games. It's about the Philly series. I said this when you went into that Philly series against the Braves. The Braves went that series against that 4-game set in Philadelphia. The Braves couldn't split that series because of the matter of where the way the Mets were playing. The Braves needed 3 out of 4 because if the same outcome would have happened starting today with the Mets, and the way the Braves played, that 3 out of 4 that the Braves could have won against Philly would at least have you tied going into the series, this weekend series. The Braves should have won at least 4 more games in the month of September. The Mets probably should have won 5 or 6 more games, but we both didn't. And I'm not going to be Ken here and say, "Oh, come to this side, come to that side." Nah, you're a fan of a team. You're a fan of a team. Don't switch, because then you really get killed on this channel, right? I kill bandwagon fans on here all the time. I've destroyed a Mets fan that claimed he's a Dodger fan too. All right, I destroyed him. And if you followed my channel, you guys know who that is. I destroyed him. When the Mets were playing the Dodgers, all of a sudden he was happy-go-lucky when the Mets were winning, but when the Dodgers were winning, he was happy-go-lucky as well. What the hell is that, right? If you're a fan of the Braves, be a fan of the Braves. You're a fan of the Mets, be a fan of the Mets. You're a fan of the Yankees, be a fan of the Yankees. Don't switch. If you're a fan of 2 teams, you're not a fan of 1 team. Sorry. Like I said, this channel, and there's a reason why I have over 1,000 subscribers that are not Mets fans, right? They could easily be all trolls, but they're not. And, you know, Dylan, you're on this channel, lying. I know he likes to troll, likes to say some crazy things sometimes, but I think deep down he thinks, look, if I can't criticize the Braves if I don't criticize my own team. You follow this channel enough, I destroy the Mets more than enough, right? So I'm not going to criticize a team that I don't cheer for, I don't root for, if I can't critique my own team. And I think that's why a lot of fans, like I got a lot of Dodgers fans that are subscribers, a lot of Yankee fans, a lot of Philly fans, and a lot of Brave fans that subscribe, especially over the last couple of months. There's a reason for that. Not because they just want to troll the Mets channel, right? There's not much to troll about when the Mets have 98 wins and the Braves have 97 wins. What is there to troll? Why are you trolling? You know, if the Mets were 30 games out of first place, troll, have fun. You did it last year. But I was here taking all the punches because the Mets deserved to take all those punches last year. But I try to be as fair as possible to every fan, every team that the Mets face, or if you want to talk about a team that I haven't talked about, I try to be down the middle. Yeah, is my Mets bias going to come out every now and then? Absolutely. But I admit it. I don't just do it to troll. But I'm not going to sit here and say the Braves are better than the Mets, because record-wise, they're not, and that's all that matters during the season. You look on the paper, I can tell you firsthand the Braves lineup is a lot better than the Mets lineup. I'm not going to say that's not true. But at the end of the day, when 162 games are played, if the Mets win 1 more game against the Braves, they win the season series. What does that mean in the playoffs? Nothing. What does that mean during the season? Could mean the difference of winning the division or not. And once again, I gave all the respect in the world to the Braves for winning the World Championship last year. That run they had in the playoffs was absolutely amazing. But it means nothing this year. Your World Series MVP is on the Marlins. You're one of your best players in the postseason, Rosario, the way he played, is not having the same season. You don't have Freddie Freeman. Right? You can look at so many different things, but 2021 means nothing for 2022. You can talk about experience, absolutely. But you did win 88 games last year and surprised a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, if you had a competent team in the NL East last year, you might not have won that division, right? You played a lot of bad teams last year, right? Right? After the second half, after the first half, the Mets were a bad team, right? So you played a bad team. The Phillies were an okay team. The Marlins were bad. The Nationals were bad. So you played a lot of bad teams too. But who cares, right? Because you won a championship. I'd rather have 10 less wins and win a division and win the World Series than having 102 wins and not winning the World Series. You want to talk about the Giants and the Dodgers, who have 107, 106 wins respectively, and not one of them made the World Series? Would you rather be them, or would you rather be an 88-win Braves division NL East title winner and win the World Series? Right? You weren't better than half the teams in the postseason last year, record-wise, but you won the World Series. Did you talk about the records then? No. Did you talk about on paper? No, because you weren't better than most of the teams you faced in the playoffs on paper, but you beat them. That's all that matters. The same thing in the playoffs. Once the playoffs start, it's 0-0. I don't care if the Dodgers are facing the Braves, the Dodgers are facing the Mets. I don't care if the Philadelphia Phillies are facing the Mets or the Braves in the wild card round, and you're supposedly better than the Phillies. What does that mean in the playoffs? Nothing. Any team can beat any team in the playoffs. The Major League Baseball playoffs is a lot like the hockey playoffs now. Just make it, because anything can happen. Now, if you look at the roster, you look at the lineup for the Braves, probably one of the better lineups in all of baseball. No doubt about it. You look at the Mets pitching rotation. Now, remember, this is if everybody is healthy for every team. Braves lineup is 100% healthy. I think it's one of the best lineups, if not the best, in all of baseball. Right? You look at a healthy rotation throughout the playoffs. You can consider top three, the Mets have the best rotation. Now, is there some close? Yes. The best rotation. Where does that get you? I don't know. No, I didn't say that, Ken. I said the Dodgers lineup after the 5th spot is not that good. Not the Braves. The Braves are stretched out from basically 1 through 8. Probably even 1 through 9 if you really want to go that far. So, but where is the best lineup in all of baseball get you? And where does the best rotation in the playoff get you? We don't know yet. Still to be determined, right? The Braves have the most strikeouts in the league. Well, if you go to a Mets-Braves postseason series, if you want to go through that, right? One of the best lineups against one of the best rotations. Well, somebody's got to lose. It's just a matter of when. So, well, yeah, Lion, because, I mean, not trying to throw a Mets bias here, but the Braves are way too homerish on their channels. On YouTube and even on broadcasting. It's a fact. Like, I honestly think some Brave fans come on this channel, not to troll, but because I kind of end objective even with my own team. If you go on the Braves channel and you don't critique your own team, then how can you really listen to that person when they can't critique their own team? You can't go on the Braves channel and they lost yesterday and then give credit to the Braves. Well, JL, that's the problem. Most strikeouts, most home runs. Well, something's going to give if you face a great pitching staff. You know what I'm saying? Dylan, absolutely not. Have you heard the SNY broadcast? They destroy the Mets a lot more than the Braves do. The Braves broadcast has rose-colored glasses on with those Braves. Did you hear them moan and groan yesterday when the Nationals walked it off? God, you think they lost the World Series? Yeah, JL, big hits win playoff games. But great pitching beats good hitting almost every time. It usually does, right? You don't win the World Series without Charlie Morton last year, the way he pitched in the playoffs into the World Series, right? Fried wasn't even your best pitcher. But Charlie Morton stood on his head in the playoffs. So, Dylan, you probably only listen to certain aspects of the SNY broadcast. If you listen to Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling, who are very critical to the Mets. Now, Gary Cohen's a Mets fan, so you don't expect him to destroy the Mets as much as Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling do. But Gary Cohen critiques the Mets a lot, right? Did you hear him talk about the crowd the last couple of weeks in September for the Mets crowds, where they haven't been as big as people expected to be? Well, yeah, because Contreras was trolling the Mets. You don't. Well, Diaz actually has it longer than Contreras because he was in Seattle using narco. It just didn't take off because who cares about Seattle, right? But you did steal it from Diaz. Diaz was doing it 5 years ago when he was in Seattle. So he did steal it from Diaz. You see, got to get your facts right, Dylan. Go into type in narco Diaz Seattle Mariners. You're going to look at how many years ago was it. He was playing narco, but nobody cared about it, even when he had the most saves as a Mariner closer in all of baseball a couple of years ago. In 18? Look at it. He was playing narco, but nobody cared because it's in Seattle. Nobody cares about Seattle. No, cocky. No, he did it. Go back 5 years ago. Contreras wasn't even in the damn league. Pay attention, guys. Go. Type in Diaz, Seattle Mariners, narco. He came out to that in 2018. No, don't get me wrong, Dylan. I don't care. I don't care if he uses it. Me, personally, I don't give a damn. Like, I can assure you there's players around the league that have the same songs. Doesn't matter. Just because it took off with the Mets doesn't mean Contreras shouldn't have it. Like, doesn't matter. Let's see. Okay, Casey. And the Braves finally won the World Series since 95. So what is the point? History doesn't matter, right? The Dodgers haven't won since 88, but they won in 2020, right? The Nationals never won a World Series, won in 2019. Well, Dylan, I think it's true that the fact they can cry, but the Braves broadcast cries just as much as the SNY broadcast cries. But guess who critiques their team more? The SNY broadcast. Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling loves to kill, right? Keith Hernandez kills the hitters. Ron Darling kills the pitchers. Gary Cohen grew up a Met fan, so I expect the bias from him. And I'm not your homie, all right? I'm an adult, all right? We're not in high school here, all right? And by the way, the Braves won 2 before the Braves won anything except before last year. So I don't understand why you're coming back to history. Cocky, okay. The Dodgers didn't win since 88. The Braves didn't win since 95. They both won in the last 2 years. Right? If you want to go over that, the last 2 out of the last 3 years, NL East teams have won the World Series, right? Well, there's no game today, Chipper. That's the problem. Cocky, and this ain't a Mets fan being cocky because I'm not at all, right? And there's no reason for me to be cocky. Am I confident? Why shouldn't I be? I have a team that has 98 wins. I should be confident. And I've said this, if you go back 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, I said to Met fans, don't go on the Braves channel and troll. Don't be cocky, but you can be confident about your team. You can be confident, not be cocky. I agree, Dylan. I said that. And I even said that on my channel. There's no reason for Mets fans to go on Braves channels and troll. There's no reason for Braves fans to just come on my channel to troll. You want to talk baseball? You want to talk about the game? You want to root for your team? Root for your team. You can bring it up and you can have a conversation and have difference of opinions about your teams. That's fine. Bring it. Ken ain't the issue, Dylan. Trust me. I want Braves fans to come on the channel, right? I want big amount of people in these streams the next 3 games. I want the Braves fans to come. I want the Met fans to come. I want to talk crap back and forth. But do it about the game, right? History means nothing, right? The Nationals in 2019, before 2019, couldn't win a playoff series. They won the World Series. The Braves haven't won since 95. They won last year. It has nothing to do with this year. Casey, see, that's where you're wrong. When it takes 5 months to choke away the lead, it's not a choke. The Braves played historically, if you look at the numbers throughout history, historically, best record since June 1st. And it's not even close. They're like almost 50 games over 500 since June 1st. That's historic, what they've done. That's not a choke job by the Mets. You don't win 100 games and choke the division lead away. The Mets can play 10 games over 500. When the Braves win 16 in a row, you're obviously going to chip into the division. It's just math. It's not a choke job, right? That doesn't make sense. Did the Dodgers choke away the division last year when they won 106 games and the Giants won 107? No. I don't understand that. If you come down to the last game of the year and you lose the division, all right, Casey, you're gone. I told you. You want to talk baseball? Talk baseball. You talk personally? Not happening. Sorry. I told you. Talk baseball. You want to talk shit back and forth baseball-wise? Don't bring up nonsense. All right? You want to bring up somebody's mom? Well, you can curse on this channel. It's no problem. But let's make it about baseball. Don't make it personal. You make it personal, you're off this channel. Go to a Braves channel and talk about your Braves. Don't come on this channel and talk about nonsense. You want to talk about your Braves? Nobody's saying they're not a good team. I've said it when the Mets were 10.5 games up. You can be confident with your team. Do not be cocky. There's no need for that. Well, if the Cardinals win the World Series, that would be annoying. Look, I think it would be awesome if the Mets and Braves play off in the NLCS. That would be awesome, honestly. Well, Dylan, here's the problem. Ken talks about baseball until somebody comes at him personally. He was talking baseball the entire time until people talk about him personally. That's what he does. And I believe me and Ken talk all the time outside of the channel. I tell him, I get on him just as much as everybody else. You can ask Ken. I do it all the time. Vinny, yeah, so let's talk about that. We got a couple of minutes left before I shut down the channel, right? All right, so talk about the pitching matchups really quick, all right? Let's go over that. Mets fans, you know the pitching matchups. Excuse me. We'll go over the Braves matchup quickly. So, game 1. Dylan, I think if you did that, that's bad on Ken. But again, I blocked Ken multiple times for a stream. I timed them out, and I do that, and I get on Ken all the time. You can ask Ken. I'm not nice to Ken all the time. Trust me. All right, so game 1, we know the pitching matchup, right? Ace against ace. Even though Max Fried has pitched better over the last 3 games than Jacob deGrom, it's only a matter of time before Jacob deGrom puts it together. And I think Buck Showalter feels like deGrom fixed whatever his issue was, and we'll see what happens. Again, both aces of the staff. Mets don't hit lefties well, but Max Fried, I think Brave fans can agree, if he's a little wild, not around the strike zone, he struggles, but got nasty, great stuff. If he's on, could be one of the best pitchers in baseball. So deGrom, Fried, game 1. We'll see how that goes, right? Lineup-wise, I don't know if the Mets-wise, again, this is a Mets channel. I'm not going to talk about the Braves lineup. It's usually status quo with the Braves lineup. When it comes to a lefty, when the Mets are facing, you're probably going to see Vientos right-handed. You're probably going to see, let's see. It's interesting to do that. Yeah, Dylan. Well, that's what I just said. Like I said, if he's a little wild early, he has a problem walking a couple of guys, and he doesn't have his great stuff that he would have if he's throwing strikes, right? Especially with his breaking balls. So, but again, he's still got nasty stuff. He can still win a ball game with not being around the strike zone and not throwing strikes if guys are flailing at the pitches and swinging at garbage. Do you do that? Well, guess what? The Mets are going to have a rough day. But again, would anybody be surprised if it's a 2-1 ball game? I wouldn't be surprised. But I can also see a 5-4 ball game because who knows, right? So with the lineup for the Mets in game 1, I doubt Ruff is going to be in the lineup. I think you're going to see Vientos in the lineup. I think you're going to see Nito in the lineup. And Nito, for some reason, I like him a hell of a lot more than James McCann. I can't stand James McCann. Again, you want to put James McCann in when Chris Bassett pitches because Chris Bassett pitches a hell of a lot better with McCann behind the plate than Nito. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. Yeah, I think you're wrong on that, buddy. I'm sorry. You're not going to give Scherzer. Again, does wins really matter in Major League Baseball now? No. Sorry. Doesn't. Wins don't matter. Wins don't matter in baseball anymore, especially as a starter anymore. I'm sorry. You can't give Scherzer, you can't give Kyle Wright the upper hand against Scherzer. You just can't do that. Morton and Bassett, I can say, is probably more level, even, than probably Scherzer, Wright. You can't give Scherzer, you can't put Wright over Scherzer. I'm sorry. Now, we can have a conversation about deGrom and Fried. Absolutely. I think that's probably more level than any other matchup. So, Fried and deGrom we can have a conversation about, especially over the last month. We can have a conversation where I would give a slight edge to Max Fried, considering the way deGrom has pitched, which hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been deGrom-like. So if you want to give Max Fried a little bit of an edge, it's not enough to say that, the Braves are just going to win outright in game 1. Chris Bassett, season-wise, has been a lot better than Charlie Morton. But Charlie Morton, the veteran that he is, I feel like he's going to keep the Braves in the ball game. And I think it's probably a very even matchup. I would give a slight edge to the Mets in game 3, but not much. Game 2, I'm sorry. Kyle Wright is not better than Max Scherzer, all right? Just not. Now, again, this is a very even matchup. But if you have to give the pitching matchup to somebody, it's probably slightly, very slightly to the Mets. But if DeGrom pitches like DeGrom is supposed to, then it's a different story. Now, there is no contest with lineup. The Braves easily have the better lineup. I can't even say that. Bullpen-wise, the Braves' bullpen is better than the Mets. Again, how that works out, it really depends on what the starters do for the Mets. And, Ken, that's a good point. The Mets' offense plays a lot better on the road than at home. How is that possible? I don't know. It's look at the last month. On the road, they scored, three more runs per game on the road than at home. How is that possible? I have no idea. No idea. I don't know. But on the road, the Mets seem to not be as, I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know what it is. But the Mets offensively play better on the road. Cocky? No, you don't. Not at all. It's not even close. I'm sorry. You guys care about Georgia football more than you care about the Braves. All right? Come on. Let's be honest. Now, are Mets fan, are New York fans assholes? Yes. 100%. We have loud mouths? Absolutely. But you're not better fans. Sorry. 420, nobody's sweeping the series. I'm telling you that right now. Nobody's sweeping. The Braves sweep the Mets, I'd be shocked. If the Mets sweep the Braves, I'd be shocked. I mean, 420, you come in here for 5 minutes and always have everything good to say. Why weren't you guys bitching and moaning about yesterday's game? I mean, you should have easily won that game yesterday. You see, that's why I have a problem with most Braves fans. You should be on here complaining about your team and the way they played yesterday. Mets are not scared. You push back Fried's start to start in this series. Who's scared? The Braves, the Mets for the last 2 weeks had the lineup of the Mets rotation the way it was supposed to line up. You push back. Max Fried was supposed to pitch against the Nationals. You pushed him back to face the Mets. And by the way, nobody's scared. Nobody's scared. All right? The Mets aren't scared. The Braves aren't scared. I'm sorry, Braves fans, there's a lot of diehards. You know, it's easy to see that since they were on TBS for many years, and they were a national team basically because a lot of everybody had TBS around the country. No, they didn't, 420. This is where your math is very wrong, right? You needed to sweep that series against the Nationals because as of right now, when it comes to a tiebreaker, the Mets have a 2-game lead in the division mathematically. If you don't sweep the Mets have a 2-game lead mathematically because the Mets will have the tiebreaker. So that means you have to win one more game more record-wise to win the division. Well, yeah, Lion, because you're mostly a home run hitting team. That's the whole point I was trying to make earlier with you, buddy. When you lead the league in strikeouts and lead the league in home runs, you don't hit a home run. You have a hard time putting together runs without home runs. No, Dylan, I agree with that. But the Braves also have been a better team over the last 5 years than the Mets. When you get beaten down again and again and again by an owner that doesn't want to spend money until Steve Cohen came in, the Braves are not better fans, okay? They're not. All right? They're not. At all. You can't compare a New York fan base to an Atlanta fan base. I'm sorry. Not even close. All right? 20-3? You want to talk about that? And you've been watching since the 80s. Congratulations. What does that mean? That means nothing. Just because you're a really good fan doesn't mean the fan base is better. Not even close. All right? Sorry. Not happening. All right? Braves fans haven't been beaten down like Mets fans. Very simple. All right? You had a consistent team that have a chance to make the playoffs, winning divisions. We had an owner who didn't care for many, 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 many years. No, Mets fans don't go to games. They never have. It's always been that way. That's nothing new. But the fan base, and he says the Braves fans, what did he say? Let's bring it again. The Braves fans aren't better than Mets fans. It's just not possible. Trust me. They're not even close. Do you have a loyal fan base? Yes. Mets fans are loyal. Listen, Braves fans don't understand the fact that we've got beaten down as a fan base, right? You can go and look at your owners and be like, they have a good team. You know, every year you got a competitive team. You have a good team, right? We had a Ponzi scheme owner for 30 years that never wanted to spend money, and that's the problem. You're going to be beaten down. And if you want to even go look a little further than that, you're always going to have better attendance after you win a World Series. It's very simple. Like, that's just a fact. You win a World Series, more season ticket plans are sold, more people are going to go to the games because it's an event the following year. So, yes, you're going to have better attendance. You better have better attendance than the Mets, right? New Yorkers jump ship to the Yankees because New Yorkers that are not real baseball fans jump to winners, right? That's just the way it goes. Every fan base has bandwagon fans. So let's go to game 2. No, it won't. I mean, why would it? Mets fans for decades have low fan attendance after winning the World Series last year. No. Not true. You've had a great attendance this year because you won the World Series last year. That's why. That's what happens. It happens. The Nationals, if it wasn't for the pandemic, would have had an all-time attendance in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2020, but they didn't. So game 2, Max Scherzer against Kyle Wright. Again, you want to go with the wins? If Scherzer didn't miss 9 weeks, he would have 20 wins too. You can't go wins in Major League Baseball anymore because it's a stat that nobody cares about anymore. It's a good feature. It's a good feat. That's awesome to look at, right? But when Kyle Wright averages 5.5 innings per start, you're not winning the ball game. The bullpen's helping you win the ball game. That's how that is a truncated stat. Just the reason why Carrasco has the most wins on the Mets. It makes no sense. Well, they have, Lion, but I'm not going to bring that up because it's irrelevant to what this year is. You got to remember, the Mets didn't make the playoffs last year, right? That was after years and years and years and years of not making the playoffs. It's a beaten down fan base. You can say the Braves should be selling out or at least filling up the stadium a hell of a lot more over the last 5 years when you're a playoff team every year. But you did it. All of a sudden, you have a lot more sellouts because you won the World Series last year. JL, I don't even want – listen. One thing I appreciate about the Atlanta Braves and their organization, they did not fall to changing their name. Thank you. That is an awesome name. I can't stand the chop, but that's pretty damn cool. Now, I know the Braves kind of knocked away from that a little bit, but Braves fans kept it going. Good job on that. Seriously. Because changing the Redskins name, changing the Indians name is so stupid. I'm sorry. If a team name offends you, there's something wrong with that. I'm sorry. Could we agree on that, guys? We don't agree on much, Brave fans, but we got to agree on that. I mean, I'm sorry. If it offends you, You have a you have an emotional issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand how it doesn't offend you for 60 years, and all of a sudden, when it's, when you got to be politically correct now, you have to be, you got to change the name. I'm sorry. Now, is the Redskins in hindsight racist? Okay, but why can't you look at it as, now, it wasn't saying that they had red skin, right? It was a tribe that was named the Redskins. That's where it is. That's the name, right? Why can't you say, well, Washington's using it and it's representing the native tribe? Why can't you say that? No, you have to bring the racism into it, right? The Cleveland Indians, a great fan base. Chief Wahoo, right? That's great. They made a freaking movie about it, basically. Like, I can't even watch Major League anymore and laugh at the situation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, man. It's crazy to me. It sucks. Come on, the Washington freaking Commanders? So it's better to call them the Commies instead of the Redskins? You know what I'm saying? Come on. The Guardians is just a stupid name. You should have kept it. I give all the credit in the world to the Braves organization not falling to that crap. It's still a great movie, but I laugh at it now because it's like, oh, look, the Indians. No, the Guardians. All right? Good job by the Braves, and I hope they never change it. I hope you guys keep doing the chop, even though as a Mets fan I can't stand it, but that's just being a Mets bias. But don't change it, please. Keep that crap. All right, Ken, I'm sorry. I can't. I cannot do that. Come on. You know what I'm saying? So, go Cowboys, baby. Beat those commies. All right, so game 2, Max Scherzer against Kyle Wright. Again, don't look at the wins, right? Because Carlos Carrasco has the most wins as a Met starter, and he might not even be on the postseason roster. All right, so let's not look at wins here. ERA is most important. WHIP, strikeouts. Kyle Wright had a really good season for the Braves, but he's not better than Max Scherzer. All right, that has to go to Max Scherzer. Again, I'm giving you Max Fried a little bit. And Dylan, I don't want to say any automatic win for anybody. Lion, I don't know. Native tribes had a lot of names that were, if somebody else that is not Native American said it, sounds racist, but there was a tribe called that in the Virginia, Washington area, at the DMV, the DVM area. So, I don't know, but they were, right? That they just don't come out of nowhere, right? They used to paint their skin red and had lines like that. That was the whole idea. If you look, I don't like to wonder why people get mad about it. Like, I try to be down the middle with certain things and look at it and say, let me look at the history of the Redskins and as soon as I popped it up, yeah, the football team popped up, but there was also a tribe way back in the day. Now I know people like, oh, we took their land. Okay, well, you can go all around the world and that happened. I don't know, but all right. So I'm giving you a slight edge in game 1 with Fried to DeGrom because I look at the last month as a pitcher and DeGrom hasn't been DeGrom-like, and Fried has been pretty damn good. So I'll give a slight edge to Fried, but if DeGrom is DeGrom tomorrow, well, it can shift rather quickly. So I'll give a slight edge in the pitching matchup to the Braves. Game 2, I can't tell you Wright is better than Scherzer because that's not. It's just you just can't say that. So I'm going to give the nod to the Mets in game 2. Game 3 is interesting. Chris Bassett had a better year overall than Charlie Morton, but Charlie Morton, as a veteran, always seems to step up in big games. Now, stuff might not matter at that point, But Chris Bassett, over the last month, compared to Charlie Morton, has been better. So I'm going to give the edge to the Mets in Game 3. So what does that mean? That the Mets have the edge 2 out of 3? Nothing, right? Because you got to play the game. We don't know. So until that happens, until we see the next 3 days, let the best team win, right? Play on the field. That's why you play between the white lines. That's why we do it. And obviously, Game 3, Bassett and Morton. There you go. So 2 out of 3 pitching matchup. I'm going to give a slight edge to the Mets. But what does that mean? Nothing, right? We don't know. The Mets offense offensively has been a 3 runs per game better on the road than at home. I don't know why. It's just a fact. Well, no, lying. He's been pitching well, but, I mean, look at the Philly game. The Braves couldn't score for him. So that's why I'm giving a slight edge to Fried, only because DeGrom has pitched a little bit worse than Max Fried over the last month. So, you know, it's going to come. I don't think any team's going to get blown out in a game. I think they're all going to be close. So, with that said, yes, there will be. I don't know if they're changing the time in the game. I doubt they're going to do that now since the weather's looking better. So, tomorrow, 7:20 game time, 6:40. Well, I should put 6:40 pregame, 7:20 game time for the stream tomorrow, guys. So there'll be a stream every game because why not? It's the most important 3 games for both teams of the year. Yeah, good. Perfect. That's great. That's good for you guys safety-wise, so that's great. You're not getting rain. That's even better. So no interruptions. Streams will be happening Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so tune in. I expect big crowds in the stream, Mets fans and Braves fans alike. So come, be respectful to each other. That goes for everybody. Ken, be respectful. You can talk about your team. You can talk crap about your team. That's what sports do, right? Talk back and forth amongst sports fans. Keep it PG. You guys can curse at each other, but make sure it's baseball related, please. So with that said, see you tomorrow night, 6:40. Have a good night. Mets are up by 1 game. Braves probably have to sweep to have a good chance of winning this division. Winning 1 game for the Mets still gives them the advantage because of the tiebreaker. We will see. Everybody have a good night. Mets fans, let's go Mets. Let the best team win. Have a good night, guys. Good night, guys.